I've always been second best in my family, not the favorite, not the golden child. Just Jake, the accountant. My brother Adam, on the other hand, was always the apple of our parents' eyes. As kids, Adam got the newest bike, I got his hand-me-downs. On birthdays, he'd get the latest gaming console while I got books or clothes. In high school, Mom and Dad attended every single one of Adam's football games but only made it to one of my debate competitions, the finals, which I won. Even then, they spent half the time talking about how proud Adam would have been. Grandpa's will was just the final proof of a lifetime of favoritism. Adam got the sprawling 4-bedroom house in the nice part of town, while I got a modest 2-bedroom on the outskirts of the suburbs. Mom had begged Grandpa to leave Adam the bigger house. I overheard her once, though she never knew I did. "Dad, please," she'd said. "Adam's going to have a family someday. He needs the space. Jake will be fine with the smaller house." I never complained. What was the point? In our family, Adam always came first. That's just how it was. So I wasn't surprised when, at our monthly family dinner, Adam and his wife, Lauren, cleared their throats dramatically and announced they had big news. "We've decided to sell the house," Adam said, grinning widely. I nearly choked on my water. "We're investing in an amazing opportunity," Lauren continued, practically bouncing in her seat. "Adam's friend Nick has this incredible business venture and we're getting in on the ground floor." Mom and Dad clapped their hands in delight. "Oh, how wonderful!" Mom gushed. "What kind of business venture?" I asked cautiously. "It's complicated," Adam replied, waving a hand dismissively. "Nick is starting this tech platform that connects investors with startups. It's going to revolutionize the venture capital world. We're going to make so much money," Lauren added. "Nick projects a 300% return in the first year alone." 300%? I repeated, setting down my fork. "That sounds suspicious." I glanced at their 2 small kids, Emma, only 5, and Jack, who had just turned 3. "Are you sure selling your house is the best move? Maybe invest some savings instead?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lauren snorted loudly and Adam gave me that condescending smile I'd known my entire life. "Jake," he said slowly, as if explaining basic math to a child, "I know you mean well, but I studied finance at Westmore College. You're an accountant who took community college classes. I think I understand entrepreneurship a bit better than you do." I bit my tongue. What Adam never mentioned was that he barely graduated from Westmore, while I graduated with honors and had been promoted twice in 5 years at my firm. "Besides," Adam continued, "Grandpa gave me the bigger house for a reason. He always knew I had a better head for business. This is exactly the kind of opportunity he would have wanted me to seize." I could have told him right then that Grandpa only gave him the bigger house because Mom begged for it. I could have pointed out that Grandpa, who built his modest wealth through careful saving and conservative investments, would have been horrified at the idea of Adam selling his house to invest in some vague tech startup. I could have mentioned that Nick had already cycled through 3 failed startups in the past 5 years. But why bother? Adam was an adult. He and Lauren had made their decision. And frankly, after a lifetime of playing second fiddle, I wasn't feeling particularly inclined to save him from himself. "You're right," I said instead, taking another sip of water. "It's your decision." Mom beamed at Adam. "We're so proud of you for taking this leap," she said. "It takes courage to seize an opportunity like this." Dad nodded in agreement. "Your grandfather would be proud too." For the rest of dinner, Adam and Lauren talked about all the things they planned to do with their newfound wealth. Travel the world, buy a vacation home, put the kids in private school. I stayed quiet, nodding and smiling when appropriate. Meanwhile, I mentally went through my renovation plans for my own small house. I'd been systematically updating it, room by room, using money I'd saved from my boring accounting job. Last month I finished the kitchen. Next up, the bathroom. 3 months later I was in my newly renovated bathroom, enjoying a hot shower under my rainfall showerhead, when my phone started buzzing incessantly. I ignored it at first, but after the 5th consecutive call, I reluctantly turned off the water and wrapped myself in a towel. 6 missed calls from Mom. Not a good sign. I called her back immediately, water still dripping onto my bathroom floor. "Jake, thank goodness," Mom answered, her voice tense. "Can you come over? It's about Adam." An hour later, I pulled into my parents' driveway and immediately noticed something odd. A mountain of luggage and boxes was piled on the front porch. Before I could even ring the doorbell, it swung open, and I was nearly knocked over by Emma and Jack barreling into my legs. "Uncle Jake," Emma cried. "We're staying with Grandma and Grandpa now." I looked up to see my mother standing in the doorway, her face drawn and tired. Behind her, Adam paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear, while Lauren sat on the couch, staring blankly at her laptop. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already had a pretty good idea. Mom ushered me inside and closed the door. "Adam and Lauren had to leave their apartment," she whispered. "The rent was just too much." So they'd blown through the house money already. Adam and Lauren had promptly bought a flashy red Porsche 911, completely impractical for a family with 2 small children. Then, they rented a luxury apartment downtown, and Adam quit his steady job at the bank to focus on the investment. They poured about $500,000 into Nick's business venture and spent the remaining $100,000 on the Porsche and a lavish vacation to the Maldives, leaving the kids with Mom and Dad for 3 weeks. "Jason said the first quarter is always slow," Adam announced loudly after finishing a call, forcing a smile. "But things are going to pick up any day now." I wandered into the kitchen to get a glass of water, and Dad followed me in. "How bad is it?" I asked quietly. Dad sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "They've burned through everything. The apartment was $4,000 a month. The car payment is another $1,500. They couldn't keep up. And the investment." His expression darkened. "Nick keeps saying they're on the verge of a breakthrough, but..." He shook his head. "I've got a bad feeling about it." Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as Adam scrambled to find work. He eventually took a job at a car dealership, a significant step down from his previous banking position, but at least it was something. Meanwhile, Lauren tried to put on a brave face, posting carefully curated photos on social media to make it seem like everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. My parents' modest retirement home wasn't designed for 6 people. Mom called me one evening, sounding exhausted. "Jake, sweetie, I hate to ask, but..." She hesitated. "We're struggling a bit with groceries. Extra mouths to feed, you know." I knew what was coming. "How much do you need, Mom?" "Oh, anything would help," she said quickly. "We're just a bit tight this month." I promised to transfer some money right away, settling on $600, enough to help, but not enough to strain my own budget. When I told her the amount, she thanked me profusely, though I could hear the hint of disappointment in her voice. She'd clearly been hoping for more. The next month I got another call. And then another. The $600 monthly transfer became a regular thing. I didn't mind helping. But I couldn't help but notice that Adam and Lauren still managed to keep the Porsche despite their financial troubles. Priorities, I guess. The plan one night. I attended my cousin Beth's birthday party. It was a welcome break from the family drama, or so I thought, until my Aunt Patty cornered me by the dessert table. "Jake, dear," she whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "How are you holding up with all this Adam business?" I shrugged. "Just trying to help where I can." Aunt Patty leaned in closer. "Well, you should know your parents are at their wits' end. They love Adam, of course, but having them all there, it's taking a toll." She took a sip of her wine. "And between you and me, they've got a plan to fix things." Something in her tone made my stomach clench. "What kind of plan?" She exhaled sharply. "They want to move Adam and his family into your house." I nearly dropped my plate. "What?" "Your mom thinks it makes perfect sense since you live alone in a 2-bedroom, Aunt Patty said bluntly. "They're saying it would just be for a few months, but..." She shook her head. "Sheila told me they're hoping you'll eventually just move out. Let Adam have the place." I stood there frozen as Aunt Patty squeezed my arm sympathetically. "I thought you should know. It didn't seem right, them plotting behind your back." The party continued around me, but I barely noticed. All I could think about was the audacity of it all. They weren't just planning to ask me to take in Adam's family. They were planning to push me out of my own home. As I drove home that night, my mind was racing. I knew what was coming. The guilt trips. The family pressure. The inevitable, "it's just temporary," which would somehow become permanent. And once Adam and his family moved in, I'd be expected to pay the bills, clean up after them, and eventually give up my own space entirely. No, not this time. I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me again. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at my kitchen table thinking. By the time the glass was empty, I had a plan. The escape the next morning. I walked into my boss Dave's office without an appointment. He looked up from his computer surprised. Jake? Everything okay? I got straight to the point. Remember that accounting position at the Pittsburgh branch? I asked. Is it still open? I want the job. Dave leaned back in his chair, studying me. That's a senior position, Jake. More responsibility. Different environment. It's a big move. I'm ready for it, I said without hesitation. I've been here 5 years. I've consistently exceeded my targets. My performance reviews are excellent. I'm qualified. Dave nodded thoughtfully. Well, I can't say I want to lose you here, but... He smiled. You'd be great for the position. Let me make a few calls. He paused. The position starts in 4 weeks. That enough time for you to get your affairs in order? Perfect, I said, already mentally calculating my next steps. As soon as I left Dave's office, I called my friend Jenna, a realtor. I need to sell my house, I said, skipping the small talk. As quickly as possible. Jenna hesitated. Well, your place is in a good neighborhood, and you've done those nice renovations. She thought for a moment. If we price it aggressively, we could probably get offers within a week. But Jake, are you sure about this? I exhaled. Never been more sure of anything in my life. No. I said it firmly, without hesitation. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Jenna worked her magic, and within 5 days of listing my house, we had 3 competing offers. I accepted the highest one, $285,000. A solid $45,000 profit from what I paid for it 4 years ago. Not bad for a small house. Meanwhile, I researched apartments in Pittsburgh, focusing on places close to my new office. Real estate was cheaper there than in my current city, and I found a beautiful 1-bedroom in a modern building with a gym and a rooftop terrace for $220,000. I made an offer immediately and started the purchasing process. Through it all, I told no one in my family. Mom called twice, once to thank me for the monthly money transfer, and once to casually invite me to dinner next Saturday. We have some things we want to discuss with you, she said, trying to sound nonchalant. Sure, Mom, I replied just as casually. I'll be there. By then, I had already arranged for a moving company to pack and transport most of my belongings to a storage unit in Pittsburgh. They were scheduled to come the day before the family dinner. I kept only what fit in 2 suitcases, enough clothes for a couple of weeks, my laptop, and a few personal items. The day after the movers left, I checked into a modest hostel downtown. It felt strange, sleeping in a twin bed with strangers in the room, but it was only temporary. Just 3 more days until I flew to Pittsburgh. I hope you've all subscribed by now. Your support means the world. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know that from where you are listening to my stories. I'm excited to hear your feedback and engage with you all. Keep the positivity coming. The final dinner Saturday evening arrived, and I drove to my parents' house for the last time. I parked a block away, not wanting my packed car to give anything away. As I walked up the familiar path to the front door, I took a deep breath. This was it. The confrontation I had spent my entire life avoiding. Mom answered the door with a tight smile. Jake, good. You're here. We're just about to serve dinner. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Dad sat at the head of the table, looking uncomfortable. Adam and Lauren were there too, both trying to look pleasant but coming off as smug. The kids were nowhere to be seen. We exchanged a few empty pleasantries before Mom set down her fork and cleared her throat. Jake, honey, she began, her voice taking on that persuasive tone I knew too well. We wanted to talk to you about your house. I took a sip of water. What about it? Mom glanced at Dad, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Your father and I have been thinking. It might make sense for Adam and his family to stay with you for a little while. Just until they get back on their feet. I looked at Adam. He was staring at his plate. Lauren, on the other hand, was watching me, a hint of challenge in her eyes. For how long? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Adam shrugged. Not sure yet. Things are starting to look up with the investment, though. Nick says we're due for a big breakthrough any day now. 3 months later, and he was still clinging to that fantasy. I had to suppress a laugh. I don't think that's a good idea, I said, my voice tighter than I intended. My house is pretty small. There are only 2 bedrooms. You could take the smaller bedroom and give them the master, Mom suggested quickly. Or maybe stay with a friend for a bit, just until things settle down. I opened my mouth to argue. Then I stopped myself. What was the point? In a few days I'd be gone, and this entire discussion would be irrelevant. Better to let them think they'd won. For now. I sighed heavily, slumping my shoulders in what I hoped looked like defeat. Fine, I said flatly. When are they planning to move in? Mom looked surprised, clearly expecting more resistance. Well, we were thinking next weekend. Would that work? Sure, I said, stabbing at my food disinterestedly. I guess I'll start packing up some of my things. Adam and Lauren exchanged triumphant glances. Mom looked relieved. Dad still wouldn't meet my eyes. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. They started discussing logistics, what furniture would stay, what would go into storage, whether my home office could be converted into a playroom for the kids. I pushed food around my plate, responding in monosyllables when directly addressed. After dessert, I stood up. I should get going. Lots to do if I'm moving out next weekend. As I walked to the door, I heard their voices drop to hushed tones behind me, but they were still audible. I told you she'd agree, Mom was saying. Jake's always been reasonable. Should we help her pack her stuff? Dad asked. No need, Lauren replied. Most of it can just stay in the garage. It's not like she has anything valuable. We'll need to get a new couch, Adam added. That old thing she has kills my back. I closed the front door quietly behind me, their voices fading as I walked away. They'd already forgotten I was there. Already planning how to take over my space, erase my presence, replace my things with theirs. But little did they know, there would be nothing for them to take over. Back at the hostel, I checked my phone to find a text from Mom. Thank you for understanding, sweetie. Your brother is so grateful. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a quick message to Jenna confirming that everything was on track with the house closing. She replied immediately. All good. New owners get the keys on Thursday. Perfect. A new life. The next morning, I woke up early, checked out of the hostel, and headed to the airport. As the plane took off, carrying me toward my new life in Pittsburgh, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. My new apartment would be ready in 2 days. My new job started in a week. I had about $65,000 left from the house sale after buying the apartment, money I planned to invest conservatively, of course. Unlike some people I knew. The first week in Pittsburgh passed in a pleasant blur. I settled into my sleek 1-bedroom apartment, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows and a breathtaking view of the city skyline. The neighborhood was vibrant, full of small cafes and boutiques. My new job came with the corner office and a 15% raise. Everything was going perfectly. Until Thursday evening. Exactly 1 week after I left town, I was unpacking the last of my kitchen boxes when my phone exploded with notifications. 27 missed calls in 2 hours, 15 from Mom, 8 from Dad, and 4 from Adam. Plus dozens of frantic text messages. I knew exactly what had happened. Today was the day Adam and his family were supposed to move into my house. I could picture it perfectly, Adam pulling up in a rented truck, unloading their belongings, knocking on the door, and finding strangers living there. I poured myself a glass of wine and sank onto my couch, debating whether to respond or simply block their numbers. Before I could decide, my phone rang again. Mom. Against my better judgment, I answered. Jake Harper. My mother's voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. What have you done? Hello to you too, Mom, I said calmly, taking a sip of wine. Don't you dare act innocent. Adam just went to your house with a moving truck and there's another family living there. They said they bought it 2 weeks ago. That's correct, I replied smoothly. The Andersons, lovely couple, 2 teenage kids. They got a great deal. Silence. Then you sold your house without telling anyone. How could you do something so underhanded? I nearly choked on my wine. Underhanded? That's rich, coming from the person who was planning to push me out of my own home. Another silence. Then in a much quieter voice, "Where are you, Jake?" "Pittsburgh. I got a promotion, senior accountant at the branch office here." "Pittsburgh." Her voice cracked. "So you just left? Without saying goodbye? Without telling anyone? Kind of like how you were planning to kick me out of my own house without asking first?" I shot back. "That was different. Mom insisted. We're family. We needed your help." "No, Mom. Adam and Lauren needed a bailout for their bad decisions. And instead of holding them accountable, you decided I should be the one to sacrifice. Again. Like always. That's not fair. Isn't it?" My voice was steady. "My entire life, it's been Adam first, Jake second. When we needed school clothes, Adam got the expensive ones. When we both had events, you went to his. When Grandpa died, Adam got the nice house because you convinced Grandpa he deserved it more." Mom was silent. "And now when Adam screws up royally, when he and Lauren make the stupidest financial decision possible, your solution is to take away my house. My home. The one I worked for. The one I fixed up, room by room, with my own money." "Jake, no. Not this time." The line went quiet for so long I thought she might have hung up. Then in a voice colder than I'd ever heard from her, "I don't know who you think you're talking to, young man, but as of this moment, I no longer consider you my son." I had prepared myself for anger. For guilt trips. For manipulation. But this still hurt more than I expected. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I think we both know that's always been the case, Mom." Silence. "Oh, and by the way, I'm canceling the monthly transfers. The $600 I've been sending for Adam's family? That's done." Another long pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. Her anger at me versus her need for my money. "We don't want your money," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Good," I said simply. "Because you're not getting it anymore. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up before she could respond and immediately blocked her number. Then I blocked Dad. Then Adam and Lauren. For good measure. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed again. Texts from unfamiliar numbers. Mom using a friend's phone. Adam borrowing Dad's. I turned off my phone completely and finished my wine in peaceful silence. 6 months later, I bought a new phone the next day with a new number. I gave it only to my closest friends, my new colleagues, and a few extended family members I still trusted, like Aunt Patty, who sent me a congratulatory bouquet when I told her what I'd done. I thrived in Pittsburgh. My job was going great. I made new friends. I dated a bit, nothing serious. Most importantly, I lived life on my own terms, free from my family's expectations. Occasionally I thought about them. I wondered if Adam and his family were still living with my parents. If the investment ever paid off. Doubtful. If Mom and Dad were still covering their expenses. I wondered if they ever reflected on how they had treated me. If they ever regretted it. But mostly I didn't think about them at all. The call one Sunday morning, I was enjoying coffee on my balcony when my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. My hometown area code. I almost ignored it. But curiosity got the better of me. "Hello. Jake, it's Beth. My cousin. I hope it's okay that I got your number from Aunt Patty." Something in her voice made my stomach clench. "What's going on?" A pause. "Adam and his family are still at your parents' place. They're having money problems. Big ones. The investment was a total scam. Nick took off with everyone's money months ago. Can't say I'm surprised." "Yeah, well, your parents are struggling too. They're behind on bills from supporting 4 extra people. Your dad even had to come out of retirement to work part-time at the hardware store." I said nothing, waiting for the inevitable guilt trip. But Beth surprised me. "I'm not telling you this because I think you should help," she said quickly. "Actually, the opposite. Everyone in the family is talking about how smart you were for getting out when you did." I raised an eyebrow. "Even your mom admitted to my mom that they shouldn't have tried to take your house." I exhaled slowly. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time watching the city below. I felt no satisfaction in my family's struggles. But I felt no guilt either. They had made their choices. I had made mine. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. And I would never go back to being second best again. Hope you enjoyed the story. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you want to see more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.